Imagine 5 girls all like you, and they're competing over you. They're pretty, red-headed, with striking personalities, and to top it all, they're quintupled sisters. A situation many would certainly describe as most fortunate, but there is in fact a position even better, that of the people trying to predict who is going to be chosen. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Yes, we're here today to talk about Kotobu no Hanayome, or as it's known in English, Quintessential Quintuplets. A manga and anime that's grown very popular in the past 2 years, outselling several of its competitors, including even some of the small little-known manga like One Piece, The Promised Neverland and My Hero Academia. And yet despite that kind of success, it's still an anime that I find to be little talked about by anime YouTube channels, or at least the English-speaking ones. I could possibly find certain reasons about why this is so, but it still creates a certain interesting contradiction, which is what drove me to make this video. I wanted to answer, why is this manga so popular, and what makes it good? We will certainly find that it is a fan favorite in its genre for many who have read it, and it's probably not unrelated to said popularity. So let's get down to business then. To answer the questions we've set for ourselves, I would like to first discuss the hook of the story. The first time I heard of the Quintessential Quintuplets was when Mother Spaceman talked about the anime while its first season was coming out. On that occasion, he described it as a wholesome harem, and I believe that makes for a very good descriptor, for within its simplicity it hides a lot more understanding of what the series is about. And yet, even before one fully understands its meaning, they may still be drawn to check it out. I sure was. Harems are generally known to be a type of anime to be well worn at this point, with its fair share of clichés and more often than not producing pretty generic stories that don't particularly try to do something original other than a gimmick or two. And while the frequent LC elements can help to attract a certain crowd, fan service has been only carried you so far. It is the manga and anime with actually good stories that truly take off, and that is perhaps Kotobu's main promise that draws people in. While still maintaining most of the positives of a harem series, Kotobu is wholesome. In other words, the author seems to care about the story he's making, rather than making a mindless repetition of what has already been done. And as such, a promise to try exists. To make a good story without being bogged down by obnoxious and distracting fan service or clichés, they can be as much of the deterrent as a point in favor. The fact that the girls of the harem are sisters provides a certain complication for a harem series that is perhaps unique to the genre, or at least was at the time of its making. Whereas in other similar stories, the main focus lies in how each of the potential partners relates to the protagonist, and does not explore the relationships of the main cast any further. The titular quintuplets in this manga cannot possibly allow for such a thing. They are sisters, and therefore of course you are going to get the perspective of family, and more specifically, a question is set of how these characters are going to act, who are usually only rivals and only see each other as such, when suddenly they also become sisters, so their feelings of enmity are mixed and confused with those of sisterly love. Ultimately, it comes down to this. It's still a harem and has the advantages of that, but it's also interesting beyond just what a harem usually achieves, so it makes for a good gateway to the harem world for fans who would not normally watch this kind of anime. And speaking of the advantages of harems, the final part of the hook comes in. Kotobu no Hanayome utilizes the core of this type of story in perhaps the best way possible, and framing the story in the context of Futaro marrying one of the Nakano sisters in the future. Not only is it made quite clear that there will be a definitive ending to this story, but the question of who the bride will be is made most prominent, something in the back or the forefront of the audience's mind in every chapter and every episode. Kotobu doesn't leave speculation life, but it openly invites the reader to try and find out the answer themselves. And that is also not just part of the hook, but an element of the manga that contributes to maintaining the reader's attention past the first impression. We manage to get people to try the anime, but can we get them to keep watching? Well, the question of the bride and the mystery that permits the Quintessential Quintuplets in general play a big role in that. It all begins with the 5-parted bride, but there's so much more of it. The second season has already completely set in motion the second big mystery of the show, that is, the identity of the girl Futaro met in Kyoto, and by the time the season ends, things are going to get more interesting yet again. This manga revels in creating mysteries, both large-scale enigmas that span the entirety of the series, and smaller ones connected to their respective arcs, which will easily have you keep reading. They are designed to make you want to discuss and theorize, and in that respect they do not fail. For it's not simply setup that Kotobu does well, creating intriguing mysteries you want the answers to, but it very successfully keeps the interest alive and feeds the theories with a constant influx of hints, clues, misdirections, and red herrings that drive the discussion. They're made in such a way where it's difficult to tell the right answer with certainty beforehand, and yet once the answer is given, going back you see that it all makes sense, with often a lot more clues to be found during a reread using hindsight. Consequently, it's no surprise that the payoff for these ever-present questions is usually most impactful and satisfying. And so, we can say that the mystery can make for a story many will like, drawing people in, making them curious about where it will go next, surprising them with plot twists. And yet Quintuplets has something that most other mysteries don't, and that is waifus. Sure, mystery manga can be great. We all love Attack on Titan, it's one of the greatest stories ever told. It has huge questions one after the other, and usually the audience is clueless as to where things are headed. And yet, as well as it's made, as thrilling as discovering the answer is, are you really going to get that passionate over who the colossal titan is? Ultimately, though it may have severe impact on the plot, it has very little relevance to the viewers themselves. However, when you start using that same kind of formula that insert waifus into the equation, the same way of the whip will be activated. You can't help but root for Beth Girl. Look for all the reasons why she's definitely the bride. Debate against the ones who are trying to crush your dreams with their opposing theories. People will get invested in their waifus, especially when they are allowed to self-insert into the main character in a romance setting that forces thinking of the characters in such context. You personally care for them and want their happiness, so of course you're also going to care about the questions set up by the series. And although that might ultimately make a lot of people angry with the ending, but it was not the one I wanted, that still proves how invested in the characters and the story the author managed to make them. It is in that way I think Quintuplets achieves the highest potential of a harem series, merging the best of both the romance and mystery worlds into the quintessential harem, and it is to that I attribute a big part of Quintuplets' explosive success. But not quite entirely, because in order to achieve that step of getting people to care about your waifus, you must first make them good, and one of the best ways of making good waifus is by adding good characters. To start with, of course the art is very pretty, especially in the manga, and the designs are very well done, being distinctive and bringing variety between the sisters, despite the fact that they are supposed to be quintuplets. That is in fact a very common theme of the story, exploring how different the 5 sisters are, in contrast with the expectation about the identical sisters. Right from the very start, each of the girls, and Futaro as well, are presented with a distinctive personality to go with the visual design. At first, they may adhere to the very basic character archetype seen all throughout the anime world: the big sister, the tsundere, the coolere, the gentle girl, the other tsundere, and the study alien. And yet even so, they're still made well enough that they're interesting right off the bat. That is not to say that they stay as just that, however, as all 6 characters have great depth to show with time. Their archetypes are well explored and understood, but they also go beyond the limits of them. One of the great strengths of the Quintessential Quintuplets, I feel, is that not only are the characters not generic, but they are made to feel real, with multiple sides to them, struggles, development, and complex relationships amongst themselves. You have a roster of characters with wide variety and great chemistry with each other. Each of them explores their own themes and undergoes a separate story, but at the same time they connect with each other in the center of the story, forming the main narrative, a tale about family, growing up, and of course, love. You have Futaro on the one hand, who displays an awful lot of personality for a harem protagonist, and is a far cry from the typical self-insert, which is there just to make room for the reader's own choices. Futaro has a unique relationship with each girl, and subtle as he may be compared to most of his fellow cast members, you can track down his growth throughout the story, to the point you can understand how he develops from the unsocial blunt boy he is in the beginning, to the choices he makes for the end. The Nakano sisters, on the other hand, are not defined by their connection to the main character, but have a proper place in the story of their own, often their dealings with their sisters being more important in the current arc of the chapter. Each of them deserves a second deeper side to them beyond what they appear on the surface, and discovering that through their interactions among themselves along with Futaro is very much a delight and to a great deal what drives the story forward. And a great story it is. I considered making a separate section talking about the story, but I figured that since it's such a character-driven manga, it couldn't particularly be separated from that. Its success in this department is still primarily based on the exploration and development of the core cast. It's done very well, and that in itself makes for an interesting story. Overall, what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is that what was promised in the hook is properly achieved once you want to read more. The first impression is the right one, and so Gotobu no Hanayome keeps your attention. With all its advantages listed in so far, it is bound to gather a strong fanbase around it. However, there is one final step to becoming a most devoted fan, one last element to what I believe became Gotobun's great success, and that would be the community. It isn't entirely a merit of the manga itself, but it's also not something that would be possible without the specific kind of manga it is. To clarify, however, I'm not saying that the fandom is a particularly wholesome, welcoming place, or otherwise exactly better in any respect than your typical fandom. In fact, it has exactly the kind of toxicity you'd expect from a story that pits the fans against each other in a 5-way battle. No, it's not that I'm talking about. However, in order to explain, allow me to reminisce a little about my personal experiences. When I first watched the anime and then first read the manga, I liked it, but I don't think I entirely loved it yet. It was an interesting read, I was curious about how it goes, and I had my slight preferences among the girls, but I wouldn't die over it. It was not until I began to check what people had to say online that the passion really started building within me and I really got into it. I read the theories other people had written, and in starting to think about this more seriously, I ended up making theories of my own. Soon enough, I was a fully immersed member of the community, a die-hard supporter of Yotsuba. I discussed the manga practically daily and debated various aspects of it quite frequently. And perhaps my case is a bit extreme without everyone getting to this level, though I can say from personal experience I was not alone. However, many fans got to the same passionate involvement to varying degrees, and that is not a coincidence. Gotobun is designed to make you want to talk about it. The previous elements of the quintessential quintuplets that I talked about, they come together in perfect harmony to produce this result. The mystery setting the main questions of the discussion, the waifus making everyone invested, the characters being worthwhile for analysis. Whether you intend to answer the mysteries or just understand the story and characters better, you end up wanting to study the characters, the narrative, the clues, find the underlying themes and how it all connects together. You find something that surprises you hadn't noticed before, and you get hooked, trying to find more of these subtle hints. You predict something right and you get all the satisfaction. You get something wrong and feel the surprise of a plot twist, thinking you'll get it right next time. All of that multiplied when it happens as a back and forth between multiple people. It is genuinely exciting to talk about a story like that, share your opinions, understand those of others, break down the story, make a prediction and then wait till the next installment, week by week, to find out if you're right. Admittedly, part of that is gone when the manga has already ended and many of us already know the ending, so there's nothing new to debate anymore, and it's definitely a different experience binging the series and reading it little by little. But now, with the second season of the anime coming out, those of us who have not read the manga get another chance at that. So my personal recommendation is, if you like the anime, go find a place or get some friends to watch it together and discuss it with people. It will make things more interesting. Do be careful about spoilers though, because they seem to be everywhere in this fandom unfortunately. And with that, do tell me in the comments below what you think is the best part of Gotobun. These are my own thoughts on the matter, and I would love to see what all of you have to say too. If you are interested in seeing some action analysis of the series to understand a little better where I'm coming from, I would recommend Mediocrity's ongoing Breakdown series. He so far covered the events of the first season, but intends to continue to the end of the manga. I will be linking that in the description. If you like the style of this video, maybe consider subscribing. I know I haven't made a lot of stuff yet to be able to judge my content well, and most of my videos so far have been test runs. I would really appreciate the support in making the channel grow. I'm right at the beginning right now, and I hope that you will all tag along to talk about more anime and shows. Now that will be all from me. Thanks a lot for watching, and till the next time, see ya!